Hello. Back for another story, I see. Well, luckily enough for you, I have one. As you probably know by this point, Earth is not the only place that exists. There are worlds that stretch far beyond the simple plane of Earth and the human beings that reside upon it. Beyond it, a vast array of realms. And our story takes place in one such realm, in a realm known as Iredell, the realm of magic. Iredell has a long and storied history, with many tales, many stories to tell. But today, you will hear of the tragedy that, to this day, still scars the name of Iredell and all the people that reside upon it. Many, many years ago, all of the countless kingdoms of Iredell lived in peaceful union. All problems were easily resolved, minor at best. There was peace and unity, as all of the countless different kingdoms, inhabited by the many different races, communicated amongst each other freely and openly, befriended each other without question, stood alongside one another. But one day, everything changed. In time, one conflict began to surface, a conflict between two of the races that inhabited Iredell, the kingdom of man and the kingdom of the Phoenix. There are many tales about why this conflict began, but honestly, the truth has been lost to time, and if such a thing as a true reason it all began exists still, there are very few who truly know it. Some say that the Phoenixes became arrogant, their power and everlasting life, leading them to look down on human beings who were thought of as the least powerful of the races that inhabited Iredell. Their short lifespans and frailty seen as not but weakness, being limited in nature, unfit to stand alongside the Phoenix or any of the other races. Others say it was the greed of man, that their ever-swelling numbers began to push too far into the territory of the Phoenix, beginning to consume their lands, demanding more and more space for their kingdom, which grew far faster than that of any of the other races. Others say it was a conflict for power, one kingdom or the other possessing some form of power that the other wished to have for themselves. But as I said, the truth has long since been lost to time. We know only how the war ended after countless years of war and bloodshed between man and the Phoenix. Eventually, it all came to a staggering end. Towards the end of the war, the king of man at the time, King Juvala, was presented with an opportunity. His grand sorcerers had devised a weapon unlike any other. Phoenixes were next to impossible to kill in any sort of permanent fashion, their very existence tied into the life stream, the eternal river of life energy that flows into all things in existence, and as such, could not be killed, at least by normal means. Special weaponry was required to even truly damage them. Only a blade forged of dragon's fangs could do them in, and only if you were able to claim the head. Otherwise, they would simply regenerate from whatever you did to them, healing rapidly in a flurry of fire. Such was the nature of the Phoenix. Though their numbers were low, far lower than that of man, their near indestructibility and immortality made them a fierce enemy. As such, the sorcerers devised a grand weapon. This was the first weapon of mass destruction ever created in the world of Iridale. A magical weapon that would select a target location, and upon that location, create a destructive force, an explosion of immense proportions. Magical in nature, this explosion would destroy anything within the parameters of where it was targeted. The magical essence used to charge this cannon would sever all connection to the life stream, regardless of what your state of being was. And so, wherever the weapon was fired, would forever become naught but a barren wasteland, absent of any form of life. Never again would plants grow. Never again would water flow, or any form of life be found there. But so too, never again could a phoenix regenerate. Once destroyed in such an attack, even they could not return from it. The scale of this weapon, its capabilities, were unfathomable, terrifying even in the most frightening of circumstances. But the war between man and Phoenix had waged for far too long. Man's hatred of the Phoenix had become toxic to their being. They were consumed by it, and in this hatred, the king ordered the use of the weapon, and in a grand explosion unlike any that had ever been seen in Iridale before, the entire kingdom of the Phoenix was wiped from the face of existence, lost for all time, never to live or breathe again. But the rage of the Phoenix would not be contained by death, for in their destruction, the sorrow and tragedy of it, the pain and anguish, the loss, fear, and rage against those who caused it, the essence of the Phoenix that remained from their destroyed race lashed out, and upon the King of Man and all his descendants placed an unbreakable curse. Just as the Phoenix would never again be allowed to live, as they could never connect to the stream of life, to grow and prosper as they should, so too were the king and his descendants cursed, never again to know the warmth of life, never again to be able to grow and prosper. This was the curse of the Phoenix upon the king and his bloodline, for heralding their destruction. Whenever anyone of the royal bloodline sought to make contact with any other living being, it would only result in their immediate death. Flowers would wilt with but a touch. Any person that they dare lay hands upon would cease to live in an instant, falling dead to the ground with but the touch of a finger. They could not even touch one another. The queen, unable to any longer touch her husband, nor hold her young daughter, fell to sorrow and despair, eventually taking her own life. The people of the kingdom, not even able to touch her corpse. Great care had to be taken in order to give her proper funeral arrangements, burning her body to ashes, and not even touching those. Having them interred, it was all done with great care, as the king and his young daughter, his only born child, were all that remained of the royal bloodline. In this, the king was broken. For many years after that, the king sat upon the throne as a ghost, no longer himself, existing only as a shadow of what he once was, despair consuming all that he knew. Alone and unable to sate it, he withered upon the throne. All the while his daughter grew, knowing not the warmth of human kindness, love or affection in any form or fashion. But to her this despair was simply the state of her being. So while tragic or not, she accepted this as her nature, destined to be alone for all time until death finally took her. This is the curse laid upon them by the phoenix that clings to their very essence. No matter how many sorcerers from how many kingdoms they summoned, no matter what efforts they made, nothing was powerful enough to break the curse. And so it seemed that the King of Man and his descendant were doomed. This year, like many others, they had a celebration, celebrating once more the birthday of the princess, her 21st, and all were gathered in the castle, as many presented gifts to the king and the princess, honoring another year of her life. As always, the king sat upon the throne, wilting in form, responding to nothing, joyous in nothing. As an individual from within the kingdom came forward. "Hello, my great king, and my beautiful princess. I am Lord Rothford, and I am pleased to be graciously invited to this event," he announced, as he took his turn, giving gifts to the princess. "I have brought you many gifts, that I might bring joy to my king and princess. But I have one that I think you will find most joyous. We of the kingdom, of course, know of the tragedy that has befallen you, and the curse you now bear. However, the enemies that placed it upon you have long since been defeated, the curse a remnant of their rage, and thus you have no means by which to claim your vengeance for what they've done to you. And my gift today remedies that. It is my sincerest hope that this brings joy to your heart, that you might find some measure of vengeance for all that has been taken from you," the man said as he looked backwards, gesturing to a few men at the door, as they began to wheel in a large cage, the cage drawn by several strong men. Inside it sat a figure with long, brown hair, unassuming in nature, covered in tattered rags and countless layers of chains, as the cart with the cage upon it came to a stop before the throne, as the princess looked down on this. "How is this supposed to be a gift? A man in a cage?" "Yes, my princess," the man exclaimed. "Bring him out, now!" they shouted, as men began to open the cage, and from within it, grabbing the long chains, exceptionally strong men, nearly 5 of them, hoisting at different segments of chains as they drew the figure from the cage, pulling him to his knees before the king and the princess, as a 6th man in heavy armor came forward, drawing a blade from his side. "What are you doing?" the princess shouted. "Fear not, princess. He is safely within the confines of the chains. He cannot break free." "No, that's not what I mean," she shouted, as the individual wielding the blade raised it high, to the man knelt on the ground below. "How pointless," the man on his knees exclaimed as the blade fell in a single strong downward sweep, cleaving his head from his shoulders, sending it spiraling into the air. The princess was horrified in this moment, and the king, as usual, gave no response, before A sudden outburst of blue flame erupted from the flying head, and from the center of the shoulder mass, the stub from which the head came, the head bursting into flame and dissipating to ash as the flame upon the shoulders grew brighter, bursting out as a shout could be heard from within the fire, as a face and whipping hair began to emerge from the flame, spider cracks of blue streaking down the stub of the neck as a new head burst forth from the flame, the fire finally subsiding as once again the hair fell limp, hanging low over the figure on his knees, and finally the king's eyes opened wide, his stance upon the throne growing tense as he stared down, now starting to grit his teeth as he looked down at the figure knelt on the ground before him. A phoenix! Yes, my king, the nobleman announced. This one was captured after killing a magistrate. What a fucking joke, the man on the ground said. I had every right to do what I did. Your little magistrate was nothing but a murderer. He took the only thing that I ever had. He killed my mother for nothing more than accidentally getting in his way. He was a man without honor, without reason, without mercy. And you label me the monster. You go to hell, the man on the ground uttered. Do whatever you're gonna do. I don't care anymore, he replied. His gaze stared down at the tile floor beneath him. You're nothing but a dirty phoenix, the king said angrily, as for the first time in a very long time, of his own accord standing from the throne in rage, beginning to step down the stone stairway towards the man knelt on the ground. What you've taken away from me, he stated. I didn't take anything from you. I was a farmer. I've never taken anything from anyone. My mother worked in a bakery, for Christ's sakes. We've done nothing. Well, up until he murdered my mother, that is. You think I care? The king announced, stepping further down the stairs as he removed his gauntlets, casting them aside to the ground. Then so let it be. By the curse that you and all your kind has inflicted upon me, so too shall you face it. You shall reap what you sowed, the king said as he madly stepped down the stairs, finally making it to the bottom, his bare hand reaching out as he clasped the head of the man knelt on the ground before him. Die! He exclaimed, gripping tightly, holding him there for a moment, as a smile creeped across his face, a rage-filled smile of hatred, almost a sense of redemption. He had finally claimed his vengeance, as the individual knelt on the ground before him, raised his head while in the king's grasp, looking at him curiously for a moment through the fingers that he gripped his face with. I see now. So the curse was real, was it? The man on the ground said, looking up to the king, who stared down at him in shock, finally releasing his head and beginning to back away. What? Why aren't you dead? The man replied. Well, by the look of it, I'd say that curse was real. You kill anyone you touch, right? The curse laid on you by the phoenix, and you destroyed. It's become legend throughout the kingdom, but most really haven't seen it. It's just something that we hear. But the look on your face says it all. You expected me to die just now, but looks like there's an unfortunate twist of events. That curse seems to affect anybody and everything else But it doesn't seem to work on phoenixes. Oh, the irony of it, the man said, laughing vigorously. I mean, seriously, what a cosmic joke. Looks like if you want to kill me, you're gonna have to do it the old-fashioned way. Find yourself a nice dragon fang blade and take my head off. But, truthfully, I don't think it's gonna make you feel any better. The man knelt on his knees said, to tell you the truth, killing the guy that killed my mother didn't make me feel any better either. And it is in this very instant that our story, or more honestly, his story, truly begins. The tale of the last Phoenix.